Keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther.
What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Tonight we have another Flat Earth debate. The debate opponents are Fight the Flat Earth and Flat Earth Brothers. So, we're not going to spend a lot of time with a lot of announcements because I really don't know what everybody has coming up. But next week, stay tuned to NonSec because they've always got live shows. And also, I do videos too. So why don't we just get on into it? Do we want to do just short introductions from both of you guys, or how do we want to structure this tonight?
I'll just quickly introduce myself, and then they can go, and then we can just have a discussion. I think it was agreed that it would be more of a discussion than a debate tonight, wasn't it?
Yes, that'd be awesome.
And I'm happy with that. All right. So I'm Fight the Flat Earth. I'm pretty sure you guys know me by now. I'm pretty certain that I know the Earth is a globe and can prove it in many, many ways. The more that I'm part of the whole Flat Earth thing, the more I see how confusing it is for a lot of people. And I know that I've made mistakes in some things that I've said, but it doesn't mean that I don't have the knowledge, because I always know when to correct myself. But I'm very interested in this discussion. I've watched quite a lot of the Flat Earth Brothers videos, and I'd just love to hear what he's got to say.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm very glad you reached out to me. I really do. I have been wanting to get out of my comfort zone. It's one of those things that I kind of shy away from, is being live or any kind of spotlight. But I really feel led to do stuff like this more, especially now with the way the dynamics are starting to change and with censorship and everything. It's important that we all figure everything out and work together. It's been kind of hard for me to watch the debates unfold between a lot of people and some of the way that people act, especially on the end that we're at, because everybody kind of represents each other, and there's just been so much hate and name calling and look at how smart I am. And so it's like I really like to just have a really good discussion with people on your side, because I was you just 2 years ago, and I don't know how I would keep a straight face and talk to somebody like me now 2 years ago. So I appreciate you guys doing that, being humble enough to do that, and being kind.
Do you want to tell us a bit about your journey into Flat Earth?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely one of those. It caught me off guard. I was not going that direction at all. I didn't think I had. I'd been going through some spiritual battles where I was down, kind of just not really a midlife crisis, just sort of down spiritually, empty. And even though I'd had some miracles happen early in my life, I just kind of ventured off and leaned on the world again, and kind of in a dark spot. And I really felt like, man, I just want to wake up. I feel like there's so much more out there to life than just what we're doing now and going through these motions until we die ultimately. And I needed a wake-up call, and that's when some miracles happened. My mom, who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and given like a couple months to live, I just, for the first time in a long time, broke down, started crying, praying, trying to pray. I hadn't prayed very much, and was just like, because I knew with the miracle that I had the worldview of God, of how the world paints him up to be. They paint him out to be like, if you mess up, you're going to get punished because you were bad and you deserve it. And when he healed me in the blink of an eye, probably a little over 10 years ago, that's one of the things he showed me, was this powerful love when he healed my broken heart. Like, my heart was as broke as it could possibly be. And it was like, I have never left you. The reason, you're to keep me first is not so that when you don't, I can punish you. It's so that you don't have your heart ripped out of your chest like you do right now, and you're not face first on the ground. It's kind of like a parent. If you guys have kids, you tell them not to cross the road. It's not so that you can spank their butt when they mess up and do cross the road without looking. It's so that they don't die. And that was kind of what I learned there. And my mom thought it was her time to go, that she deserved to die, and this was her punishment from God. And, you know, kind of the same stereotypical religious views of who the Father is, which they're not true. There's a lot of lies in religion that I've discovered too in my journey. But she was given the death sentence that many people are given, and she was condemning herself. And I just asked the Father, I said, please, speak to her the way you spoke to me, and show her that it's not your will for her to die, that, you know, you sent us your son and all these great things for a reason. And she texted me the next day at work and said, God spoke to me. And that's when I started kind of going, wow, there's this Father that I walked away from again is listening to me. I don't know why. I'm going to try to find out why. Well, long story short, she went to another doctor, got another diagnosis. They wanted to start chemo. And I don't really like chemo. I think it's sort of a barbaric treatment for where we should be right now with all that's out there. And it's like 100% poison when you look at the ingredients. And I just asked the Father to save my mom from the side effects. And of course, she kept texting me every day, I'm not having any side effects. I'm not having any side effects. And people around her are like dying from this, like really in pain. And so I was just starting to pray a lot more and ask some more questions, and doing some investigating. And around this time, I'm investigating evolution like crazy. When kids would leave, I would just draw up on the board, you know, a timeline of Earth that I'm given from the experts, you know, and would just map everything out and look at the, you know, the complexities of life. And then I just started finding all sorts of hoaxes with evolution, like the embryo drawings from Haeckel, Piltdown Man, and it just kept Dino Bird, like all these things that I saw and the other teachers use in their class and that I had in my textbooks, and thought, these are admitted to be hoaxes. Why are they still here? Something's not adding up. So evolution was really my journey into things. And one day, while God was answering everything that I was asking him, I just hold on. I decided to ask him to show me the truth about everything. I said, things aren't adding up. I know you're real. Just show me the truth about everything, and I'm ready for it. I don't care how crazy it is. And that was literally what I was saying. And I thought, I'm ready. You know, you kind of say that thinking you are. I really wasn't ready. And it seems like almost instantly I started seeing things, and I'm like, no, this is not true. I'm going to go outside, look at the stars, study them for 6 months, 7 months, however long it takes until we get to the other side of the sun, and prove that we're living on a spinning ball. Like there's no way that Earth could be stationary. There's got to be some sort of test I could do to prove that it's moving. And surely there's just not all fraud. I knew the moon landings were fake, but I figured, you know, that was to win the space race and all of that. So definitely not like a super conspiracy theorist by any means. I had just really started looking into the truth about creation and evolution and all that. And it led me down a path that is almost never ending. It's a lot of research. I do more research and experiments than I've ever done in my life. And so, and I know a lot more about the heliocentric model than I've ever known in my whole life. It's weird that I'm where I'm at, and I literally know way more about the globe than I ever thought I would know.
Can we ask about the heliocentric model then? What are the holes that you see that there are in the heliocentric model?
Well, just the sheer speeds of it. When I was growing up, as a young child, my dad was in the Air Force. He worked on jets, and we see these things flying overhead all the time, and the sonic boom and how fast these things move when they break the sound barrier is slower than what you and I are supposedly moving right now. And that's just the Earth's spin. And a lot of people focus on that spin, and we use it for all sorts of different things, to getting rockets into orbit and all these different things they say we use it for. And but the speeds of Earth, its spin is by far its absolute slowest motion. Like the other speeds totally would be so much faster.
You do realize that the actual revolution is just once every 24 hours, 0.000694 RPM.
Oh yeah.
That is the actual spin of the Earth. The tangential velocity isn't really important, because a major factor in scaling is maintaining that revolution. So if you were to scale down the Earth, and maintain its velocity, the thing that you maintain is that rotational velocity. So it no matter the size, it's still just spinning at 0.000694 RPM, which isn't fast at all.
Yeah, you're right. At 1,000 miles per hour with the spin, but again, we're moving the distance of the Earth's diameter every single minute through space because of the Big Bang, that explosion. That's the distance of our own diameter while we're spinning, and on top of that, we're circling the Earth or the Sun. So it's about 1,100 miles in that same minute. So those two speed or distances really that you travel are crazy. And it seems like to me when I'm looking at star trails, the two fastest speeds should start to show up at some point, and they just never do. It's like a perfect.
You mean within the star trails,
circle.
that you should see something different? Well, the thing is, with obviously there is scale. An example that I give is if you were a microbe on your floor, right, and you were just spinning around in a tiny section of your floor, no matter where you were in that spin on the floor, looking up at the ceiling, it would look exactly the same.
Yeah,
because the distance is so far compared to how big you are. So there's no reason the star trails should change, but that doesn't mean that they aren't, because I was just doing a bit of research on it earlier, and where is it? But the North Pole star, the Polaris is actually moving. I can't remember where I put the actual distances, but it is an observable amount that is moving, and the amount that it is moving comports with the distances that we say that they are.
Yeah. Well, that's some of the things, because I started looking into the very early days of like space travel and sort of how far, like when I pictured, this is the funny thing, even when I believed in the heliocentric model 100%, when I pictured the Apollo astronauts going to the moon and coming back, and I look at their diagram, I don't know if I guess I can't really share screen, but there's a diagram of the Earth, and then they have the rocket going around the moon, coming back to the Earth and all of that. And it just seems so plausible. I pictured it going straight from the moon all the way to the Earth in a straight line. But then I realized that Earth would have traveled like 23.5 million miles through space during that 48-hour journey. And there's no combustion speed of a rocket that could have kept up with that ever. I mean, liquid hydrogen combustion is what really...
The misconception there is the fact that the velocity the rocket has when it leaves the Earth, it's going to maintain that velocity. The Earth is going that speed, so when the rocket comes out of the Earth's atmosphere, it's still going that same speed. So it doesn't need to have extra thrust to keep up with the speed that the Earth is going around the sun. All it needs to do is have the fuel it needs to get to and from the moon, which was very precisely calculated, and they made sure that the moon was the closest part that it was within its orbit, and they used the fact that the Earth is spinning to the west to give the rocket extra bit of boost and everything, and that was all calculated precisely as it needed to be.
Yeah, I see that. That's what you're saying.
Moving, it's still that isn't a problem. That's no hole within the model, because that fits with what we expect.
That's what I thought too. But the Earth, it doesn't move in a straight path. It's an arched path. So while the rocket's moving, it's an arched path. The moon and the Earth and the moon are moving in a spirally arched path through space. So the rocket would be in a straight line. That's the thing that's different. If it was like a train or a plane, I get that analogy a lot. Like when you throw a paper ball up in a plane, you can catch it.
Right. The problem here again is, without being rude, the misunderstanding of what gravity is and the way it's affecting. When you look at the Earth and the Moon, you basically consider that as one system, right? The Earth-Moon system is its own gravitational well that is orbiting the star. So that anything within that gravitational well is going to be affected by that gravitational well, whilst that gravitational well is moving around the star. So yes, it is the whole thing is moving in an arc, but the rocket is within that system that is moving. That is its reference frame.
I just don't see how it maintains that arced path while it's moving.
Because of the way gravity works. Gravity is it's
what does
warping
it
space-time,
do
which creates a non-locality. So it's literally, imagine the whole Earth-Moon system as like a bowl, right? A bowl of gravity, and the Earth and the Moon and everything, all our satellites and everything are within that bowl, and that bowl is moving around the sun. Does that make sense? So any rocket going between the Earth and the Moon only has to consider what's happening between the Earth and the Moon, because it is part of that Earth-Moon gravitational system.
Yeah, I know they say gravity pulls things. When it's a larger object, it's going to pull things toward it, but I just don't understand how that would 23.5 million miles of movement. It doesn't seem possible, even with gravity, because gravity, I mean, exactly, it pulls things, and then it's like at a certain distance, it pulls and it pushes. It has to do a lot of different things to keep things in orbit. Like for the Moon to not fly off into space, it's kind of have like an invisible, rope of gravity pulling it towards the Earth. There's just so many different things that gravity would have to do.
Your understanding of gravity is? What do you define the heliocentric understanding of gravity as?
It's kind of like, I kind of agree with Neil deGrasse Tyson when he says, what it is, we really don't know what it is. It just seems so, there is a force that keeps things in motion. That's the thing. I'm not saying that gravity is just laughable nonsense or anything like that. But in order for it to keep things like it does, and circling around the Earth, like the Moon and all these things, it would have to pull them towards the Earth. Like if I'm spinning around holding a bag with weights in it, I have to have force pulling it toward me. But if I lose that, it's going to fly away from me. But there's nothing, it's pulling toward me, but then at the same time, there's something that has to be pushing it in a circular path around the Earth as well. So it's a lot of different directions of force that gravity would have to have on something. It's very,
okay.
I don't know.
It's important to understand the fact that gravity, although it can be observed and calculated as a force, that isn't necessarily what it is. Einstein expanded on Newton's understanding of gravity. Newton thought that gravity was something that propagated instantly. It was just there. Whereas Einstein managed to explain how it was the warping of space-time creating a non-locality. And that will explain how things can be within a sphere of influence and that be the main thing that is affecting it. Because the fact that the Earth-Moon system is warping space-time and creating this bubble of pulling towards it because of the mass warping the space-time, it literally changes the position of things, which within Newtonian physics manifests as a force on Earth with a downward accelerating speed of 9.8 meters per second squared. So I think the reason why you can understand how the rockets can keep up with that movement is because you are viewing gravity from a Newtonian understanding. And that is great because obviously there is the law of gravity, which was given to us by Newton, which is a mathematical function, an expression of the observations that we see. But that wasn't the complete explanation of gravity. And yes, we still don't know 100% how mass causes space-time to warp. But when Neil deGrasse Tyson said we don't know exactly what it is, that he was right, but we know enough. We know that it is a warping of space-time which manifests within Newtonian physics as a force. We just don't know exactly why mass warps space-time. So we know enough to say how it functions and why it functions.
Okay. So how far away from Earth would you have to get for the other speeds of Earth to actually factor in or to matter to where you could get distance away from Earth? Where's that point?
Well, the law of gravity, the F equals gm1 m2 over r squared, that shows that the attractive force is proportional to the masses and inversely proportional to the distance between their centers. So as you are really close, it will exponentially get stronger, but the further away you are, it will exponentially get weaker as well. So there isn't really a point where you would be outside Earth's gravitational influence, because every particle in the universe attracts every other particle, but it's how close to the warping of space-time of each individual bit of mass and how much that warping of space-time for each individual bit of mass affects all the other bits of mass that have to be taken into account. And when you have the Earth-Moon system being a much bigger gravitational influence than just the rocket is going to be affected by that gravitational influence rather than the other way around. So it is part of that system. The distances are easily calculable using the law of gravity.
Okay.
Or do you mean more about like how does gravity have a speed that it propagates at?
I just and when I looked at it and I was really investigating it, it just, to me, seems like those other two speeds of Earth are just never a factor with anything, really. It's just we always look at the Earth's spin when talking about its motions, and it, to me, the other speeds, when you try to look at them, they're hundreds of times faster than sound. And, you know, like a bullet flying through the air is nowhere close. And trying to imagine being even a bacteria on the front of that bullet, you know, like that small,
Okay.
like it's just, it's so fast.
But
It's
that
hundreds
bullet's
of times
traveling
faster.
through a medium, isn't it?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you there. The
No,
bullet's
you're
traveling
right. But
through a
even,
medium,
I mean, just,
but
yeah.
there is no reference frame for the Earth to be traveling through something. So again, you can say it's traveling that massive speed, but what it's doing is orbiting the sun once every year. That's the speed that we have to think about, rather than the fact that it is going this, you know, what was it, 66,000 miles an hour or whatever. What we actually have to think about is the fact that it is orbiting our star once every year, rather than actually how fast it's going. The same with our solar system going around the galaxy. You know, the speed that we are actually moving is pretty fast, but relative to us going around the galaxy, it takes thousands of years for us to do that rotation.
Okay. What was the other thing? Oh, have you seen the latest news about the moon being within Earth's atmosphere, and what are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, that's something that they kind of knew about. It's just when they say the moon within Earth's atmosphere, they're not like saying you could breathe on the moon. There is particles of our atmosphere that extend a long way out. But the particles, I was reading the paper, what you're getting at that point when the moon is passing through that section of the atmosphere is just some very lightly spaced hydrogen particles. There's nothing else. It's not like it's passing through the actual proper atmosphere that we breathe and planes fly in. There is particles from the atmosphere that extend way further than the troposphere. I can't remember the exact name for it. And this is just, the story was kind of a resurgence of the data that was collected many years ago. And then it's been picked up by flat earthers as well, your scientists are saying the moon's within Earth's atmosphere, but that's not really what it's saying. It's just saying that there is particles of Earth's atmosphere that extend, you know, really far out into space. And some of these, it's not even all the time. There's just a certain point within the moon's orbit around Earth that will pass through some of these particles.
Okay. Yeah, like 390,000 miles. What is how far it expands out into space? That's just mind blowing.
Yeah, but again, it's not like it's the atmosphere that we're breathing right now. You know, it's the very limits of the particles that are part of Earth's atmosphere, and a lot of them are going to be affected by solar winds and being blown off into space, or, you know, things like that. It's not really our atmosphere like we think of it. It is just the very outer limits of the particles that are part of the atmosphere.
Okay. Yeah, and that kind of leads into the whole vacuum thing of watching vacuum experiments and kind of seeing many of those go on. If you ever watch Action Labs where he puts Vac Man inside of a vacuum, have you seen some of those?
I love Action Labs.
You like
he's
it
great fun.
expand. Yeah, he's really good with his experiments, and that thing like blows up like a balloon, just really big.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about like the Apollo astronauts, seeing them go from their environment into the vacuum. It would just seem like, because they already have residual air, and when they put the Vac Man in there, they sucked out all the air, and then they put him in there with no air in him, and he still just, with the little bit of air that was in there, puffed up like a balloon. And these guys just kind of stepped right into the perfect vacuum of space, and it just seems like they would have, because they had no way of, like, when I go scuba diving, I let bubbles out. If you let air out, but if I was to try to go to the surface, my lungs would explode. I mean, just boom, if I didn't exhale and let
what
the
you've got
air
to
out.
understand with the astronauts going onto the moon is they were themselves in a pressurized spacesuit that had its own air circulation system and everything.
It wouldn't have been able to let air out once they stepped out. If there was a device letting air out of their system, it would have just kept opening up. I mean, there's no way.
I'm pretty sure it recirculated the air through some kind of carbon filtration system.
Yeah, they had a rebreathing system, but it's like the air they're breathing is already in their suit, and so it would expand rapidly when they went out. Kind of like with the Action Labs Vac Man, their suits would have puffed up really big like a balloon.
The whole system is a maintained system. The same way that a submarine underwater is its own maintained system. That suit the astronauts were wearing on the moon is its own maintained system with its own pressure and everything inside it. So it's not going to be affected by the pretty much vacuum outside of the suit. They were designed to do that. I really don't see the issue with that.
Well, their suits were like a soft material, like a submarine would be solid, but the soft suits, kind of like if you were to take a miniature version of that, and I would really like to see this done, a miniature version of their suit or a real life size version of their suit, and just throw it into a vacuum with the amount of air that was already in it from just them breathing, and see what happens to it, just to see what happens. Maybe put, a living organism inside the suit, throw it in there, just kind of see if anything goes down. If the suit expands like the Michelin Man, that'd be interesting. And if it stays the same and kind of defies what happened with the Action Lab experiment, that'd be cool too.
Well,
the NASA astronaut suits are made out of a non-expanding material as well. It's not really something that could expand.
Yeah, well, I'd seen the guy. He'd also stuck his hand in a glove and put that in the vacuum, and it would just start expanding like really big, and then he would like wrap it in duct tape, and it would still like start bulging out like a can of spilt biscuits. It just looked it was interesting with watching that and thinking, wow, why doesn't this happen when they go? I can understand on spacewalks if they have a tube letting air out or something, but
well, no, I mean, the tube wasn't to let air out. That was kind of their air supply going in, if I'm correct. Tell me if I'm wrong, FTFE or Dave. But also, the experiment that you're talking about was actually performed. I mean, they had to do those experiments in order to design a suit to be able to go into space. And there is a well-documented accident that happened when the suit.
I was going to bring that up.
failed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
yeah, I saw that
FTFE.
where the guy blacks out and kind of like fell over, and they had to fix it.
They hadn't connected the hose properly at the back, so when they created the vacuum in the chamber, obviously he started losing pressure as well. And the problem, that actually helped them make the design of the suit better. Failure is a good thing because it teaches us to be better. And the experiments of making those suits and the tests done on them all in vacuum chambers, I mean, these things are well documented and kind of done all the time.
I would just like to see it. Like, I would like to find. I have a hard time finding videos of like a person in a suit like the Apollo astronauts stepping from one chamber into the vacuum, just to see it happen myself, just to go, okay, here's a living human in a suit. And just to actually know for sure that it's a vacuum, like to have some way of proving.
So the way they would happen, obviously, getting from the craft to it wouldn't just be like a door, you're in the vacuum. They would go into a chamber that would equalize, and then they would open the door already. So
yeah, otherwise they would
wouldn't
just
be
they would
like
get ripped out.
yeah. So they go through a process of a chamber where it equalizes with the lack of pressure outside and then they go out. So I mean, and I'm pretty sure you can see all that stuff in the videos from the moon landings and stuff. And again, we've tested suits to show that they're capable of doing these things with people in.
Yeah, and I've seen some tests, but they're usually hooked up to some sort of device or hose or some way of letting some of the pressure out, because the suits would start to expand and they let them out, and you can kind of see the guy inside the suit kind of like move when they're doing that. Like it's, I've looked at a lot of those.
The suits the astronauts were wearing wouldn't have expanded because they were made out of material that was designed not to do that.
That just,
I mean, I'm not entirely sure.
It's just weird because they were able to bend and.
Yeah, I mean, say they were able to bend and move. It wasn't the most graceful things in the world. Yeah. And I know they weighed an awful lot, and they were really, not nice to be in for the astronauts. But the fact is that even if they never were on the moon, we've still proven that these suits would work in a vacuum environment by doing tests in vacuum chambers and stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't really think that the ability of the suits to be able to deal with that is in question. I understand that the whole I need to see things myself, because I'm very much the same. But what I would do is, I wouldn't say, well, I have to see just that. I would go and think, well, what would be an equivalent thing that I could maybe go and test and prove myself? And that's when I would look into the creation of the suits and the tests and stuff that were done on them to show that they are capable of this being done.
I've done that. I pulled up their manual and read through everything on the manual, the technologies and all that. They've got those are still on file, the actual manuals that show you the whole suit. So far,
I've given you kind of sufficient responses to explain things.
Yeah, you're really good. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Is there anything that you have that is like a knockout proof for you that the Earth isn't what we say it is?
Yes, there's a lot of things, but the biggest things is just repeated tests that I've done and that I've seen. I've seen a lot of times where people have found the curve and then they come out again when the weather's different and it's gone, and then they it's like it's there and then it's gone, and then they find better ways to see further with like the infrared filters and camera modifications, and we can just see so far and see things that we shouldn't see, and that to me proves that there's just been miles and miles of missing curvature, and it's mind-blowing how much is missing. And with fisheye lens, there's some fisheye lens experiments anybody can do. These were actually one of the easier tests that anyone can do, looking at space footage from like SpaceX and NASA, and I watch them when the fisheye lens or whatever lens they're using, when it moves and how the horizon will change. It's mostly curved, but then it'll go from curved to flat, and then from flat to concave, especially on the one SpaceX did with the rocket falling back to Earth, where it's just spinning and you just can see concave, convex, concave, convex.
I mean, I don't think anyone's denying the fact that a lot of cameras have fisheye lens and show that kind of thing. But when you're talking about the curvature being there one day and not there the next, that's because different conditions in the atmosphere and different temperatures create different atmospheric refraction conditions.
And
do you understand how atmospheric refraction can make things come up from behind the curve? Is that a process you understand within the heliocentric model?
Well, it's like a magnifying glass. It's like a lens. Like you can set a glass of water on a table and put a light, off the table like this far and just kind of move it in a straight line. And eventually that light's just going to vanish behind some sort of curve on that flat surface of a table within 4 to 5 feet. That's not there. It's got that magnification and refractive property.
Okay, that's not really what atmospheric refraction is. I mean, there's different types of atmospheric refraction, but the one that allows you to see things further than you are, than you should be able to, is basically light being slowed down as it comes towards you and bending so that it is bending the light down to make things appear higher than they are. So you're seeing the light beyond the curve because the bend of the light has brought it up, because the light from you is bending down. So because of the way the light is going through our atmosphere, it is making it appear that you can see things that are further than you should be able to. So it's,
yeah, to a point, but sometimes when you see like 1,200 miles.
I mean, even when you're looking at the world record photography that a lot of flat earthers use, again, that was taken from quite high up, and it was chosen for a specific day with really good atmospheric conditions.
Yeah.
And even then, when you do the calculations, you show that light would only have to have bent just under 1 degree for you to be able to see as far as you can. And we know that atmosphere can make light bend. So it's not, it shouldn't be something that isn't understandable, because we know that the atmospheric refraction can make things appear further than we should be able to on our globe. And when you have days that are really, really good, then you're going to be able to get these big distances, but it's all calculable and easily understandable as part of our model. And it's not things that we would go, oh, well, that shouldn't be able to happen. We know that you'll be able to see things that far. It's understandable to us. We can do the maths to say why we can see the things that far. We can explain the refraction effects of the atmosphere. We can explain how light is being bent, because we know how light propagates and the speed of light and things like that. So all these apparent holes, they're not holes, they're just misunderstandings.
Yeah, well, not really
every
holes.
hole I'm ever presented with, I can be like, well, actually, it's explained like this. So I mean, that's where I come from with the whole thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of good explanations out there. The thing is that bothers me is that it's like, when you see that curve, if you just make that observation one time in your mind, that's really curved. But if you come back and you don't see it, well, then it's refraction, you know? So, I mean, it's like, it kind of goes both ways. Like, it's not really proof of the curve if it's there sometimes, and sometimes it's not. And seeing things like 1,200 miles away, even though I think you're in a plane and you can see something from 1,200 miles away, that's like a lot of miles worth of like missing curve. And refraction, I guess you would be above a lot of atmosphere and a lot of moisture. So there's just, it's really hard to do experiments that match Earth because it's so big and there's so much moisture in the air. It's hard to scale that down to a smaller level. It's literally almost impossible unless you're just using like magnifying lenses and things. Yeah.
You know, it is hard to scale Earth down. And this is where, I mean, a lot of flat earthers jump on that fact that we can't scale Earth down and show a lot of the effects like gravity and stuff on a smaller scale. But the curve thing, there's never a curve. There's never like a distance that we can see that we shouldn't be able to see.
You're saying there's never a time where we've seen too far?
Yeah, there's never a time where it's something that we shouldn't be able to see. All those pictures of the things that are really far away, it's within our model. When you put in the calculations for atmospheric refraction and the observer height and how much should be hidden of things, it actually works out. I mean, have you done the calculations for all those photographs?
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, I've done the calculations with different websites and everything.
The Water Bislam flat Earth, round Earth like model, because you can take those distances and plug them into this Water Bislam Earth curve calculator that actually shows you how things should appear on a flat Earth and a round Earth. And it always matches up with what the round Earth says rather than the flat Earth. There's never something wrong with the maths. That's the thing.
Well, I guess when there is something, then it's refraction, and when there is a curve, it's not refraction. I think that's the thing that's kind of frustrating with this is anytime we see a curve, it's the curve, and when we don't, and we see like 250 miles or 1,200 miles, it's always refraction and bending light upward. And when I watch time lapses of the refraction happening throughout a day, everything goes from flat to curved upward in the middle. There's like a bulge, like you'll see a shoreline vanish, like with the what was that, the Skunk Bay time lapse. You'll see the mountains in the background will actually get lower than the shoreline in the front ground. So not only is the curve in the middle going up, the mountains themselves will drop. And that's what I found interesting. It looks like the Earth is curving into a ball right in front of your eyes. And so that's a real time. You can watch it happen within, I guess, a span of a day from like sunrise to sundown.
I've seen that, the one you're on. I know exactly what you mean.
But just zoom in on the mountains and you can see them drop. It's really interesting that they actually drop behind the curve.
I mean, that particular video, obviously, is taken from pretty much ground level right by a lake. And when you're that low to the ground, the atmospheric distortions for you are going to be a lot worse than if you were looking up, if you were a little bit higher. If that camera was 6 foot higher, you probably wouldn't have seen that amount of distortion. I mean, again, it's all when you can actually calculate the refractive index based on temperatures and things like that. And the data for temperatures and stuff is always available. And when you put them into the Earth curve calculators that allow you to take into account refraction, it always works out to what we expect. Whenever FlatEarth does the calculation for something saying, oh, look, there's all this curve missing, the fact is they always do it wrong. And I don't think a lot of people understand exactly how to use the Earth curve calculator correctly. Because again, every time you put in the correct figures, you will get what we expect to see. Yeah,
you have to account for elevation and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it's not quite as simple as just being line of sight. You know, calculating a curve is a lot more complicated than just calculating distances on a flat plane.
Yeah, it's very it's really deep, and it's funny that they deleted from Wikipedia the Earth curve calculator, Pythagorean's theorem, and that I thought that was interesting that they're censoring everything. But a lot of people, when they're looking into this for the very first time and they're calculating curve, they use the formula for slope. And I've seen some smart people do it too. They're like, yeah, it's 8 inches for the first mile. It's another 8 inches for the second mile. And, you know, and they, before you know it, they're using the formula for slope. And that's just so common. And I think it's a smart move for, I mean, the way they're doing things with Google and YouTube and Wikipedia and all that, it's very smart because people are not going to figure it out when they start using, if they're not using the right formulas for curve and seeing everything that's out there.
Isn't the right formula, don't you? You understand that?
Yeah, they use you have to use the curve calculator because the Earth and also account for
like 8 inches per square is, you know, it's pretty much accurate for like 100 miles or something, but it's pretty much useless for calculating distances along, you know, those kind of distances. So you're right. You have to use the Earth curve calculator, or at least know how to do it by hand. And actually, Bob, the science guy, who I'm pretty sure is in the chat, did a very good video recently about doing Earth curve calculations by hand.
Oh, you said Bob? You said Bob, the science guy, is in the chat?
Yeah.
Hey, Bob. I want to apologize to you for some. I came across a video the other day. Not sure if he can hear me or if he's listening, but I'm sure it broke my heart. It really broke my heart. He seems like a really kind, genuine man. And this flat earther, I don't know who the guy was. He was a total douchebag. Was just like very insulting, and it broke my heart to see that. I hate that happens. I'm glad you kept your cool, buddy, because I couldn't have done it. So I'm just wanted to tell him that.
Nathan Oakley.
I don't even know who it was. I'd never seen the guy or heard the guy before, but he was a total jerk.
He is not a good representation of Flat Earth. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah. I really hated that. I hated to see that.
Yeah. So I noticed one of your videos was talking about Soundy's observations at Lake Pontchartrain. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, that was a very, I mean, it was almost laughable when you look at the bridges. The bridges were curved about like this. The cars were going up and then down. And so it was obvious there was some sort of distortion going on. And he posts that, and just all the comments are like, that's the curve, and and in my mind, I'm just like, this is obviously not the curve. And when you go to, I did some observations, some simple small scale observations that you can do if you're at eye level with a flat surface, because we forget how big Earth is. If I have a flat surface and I'm even, an inch above it, that's hundreds of miles, thousands of miles above Earth. So you have to be right at the level of that surface with your eye to even see that effect of the curve. And you can use a flat surface. I think I used my marker board where you set your markers on that little stand, and you can put your iPhone camera right up next to it and just see how it looks like the markers were going over a curve similar to that. And that was without any atmospheric refraction or anything. You're in a controlled
I
environment.
mean, I've got to say,
But
when I was watching that video, I did notice that pretty much all the surfaces you put those things on were clearly not flat.
that's
Like,
exactly
when
what everybody says. And
but
that's the beauty of it.
It was clear. You could literally see the warping of the wood that you were putting on, and when you
Yeah, you
when you
could.
had them on the little shelf in front of the whiteboard, that was it was quite clearly warped in a way that would make it appear that there was a curve.
Exactly.
It wasn't a flat. It wasn't flat. To do that
Oh, yeah.
kind of comparison, you would actually have to have a flat surface to be able to.
It was flat.
to
Any
say
marker board
that
you
is
buy,
happening.
it's a standard marker board, and it's as flat as you can get. I mean, I can put a level on it. I can send you a picture. I can bring a meter stick or a level or anything, flat as it can be. But everybody sees that and they go, you and your bendy surfaces and your curved countertops, and their standard science tables and their standard science, like, they're perfectly flat. Like, there's no water damage or warping. Like, they're literally flat, and they do look curved when you look at it. When I saw those pictures after I took them, I was like, this looks like Lake Pontchartrain. It looks just like that imagery that I've seen with the bridge curved that makes the Earth look so tiny. I know the Earth isn't that small.
Do you know why you get those bits that look like it's on a roller coaster? Do you know why
Do I
it's
know
doing
why?
that? Yeah.
It's probably
It's not really
something.
a distortion as such. It's
just-
literally because that bit's so far away, and as you zoom in, the further away you are, the more pronounced the curve gets. Because of the way that we see things. So the further away you are, the more you're going to see the curve. And so because that is zoomed in so far at that point, it's just seeing it like it's compressed to make that bridge look, like that. But it's almost an exaggeration of showing you what the curve is. You can still see the clear curve going along the bottom of the pylons.
Oh yeah, you can see a curve there.
And when he was doing the observations, he did them live. It wasn't all post editing. He was doing this live.
Yeah.
He was recording it live, and he was taking directions from the audience. So there was no manipulation or anything.
Oh no, I'm not saying
And
he manipulated it.
Clear that there was a curve. And there's that's just one observation of curving water. There's so many more. Have you seen Red Rhetoric's blink test from Tampa Bay?
I don't think I have. I don't think so.
Okay, so he takes two photos. One like right across the bay of the buildings, and then one a bit closer. And then he matches the video, the pictures, so so it's zoomed in and the buildings are the same. And you can literally see the water line being halfway up the buildings on the one that's further away. And there's no distortion in the buildings. There's no atmospheric lensing or anything to make the buildings disappear from the bottom up. The only explanation for that observation is that the water is in the way. And the only way that water could be in the way is if the Earth was curving. Another observation of the Earth quite clearly curving is Miles Davis's observations from Terpen Law in Scotland, which is literally just down the road from me. Have you seen those?
No, I didn't. No, I haven't.
Miles Davis is definitely one you should check out. So he was up a hill in Scotland, and his camera height was 210 meters. Okay, and he was looking across at the bridges on the Firth of Forth, and the top of one of the bridges is also 210 meters. So it was in line with his camera height. Now, looking at that picture, you could see the hills below the bridge in the distance. But the thing is, those hills were over 500 meters. So the only way that they could have appeared below the 210 meter bridge is if they were on a slope, on a curve that was going away. And that's not the only observation he's got. He's got so many observations showing where there is clear curvature that matches with the calculations that we give. And there's no alteration, there's no cheating. This is just simple. I've put my camera here and I've taken this photo, and anyone can go and do these observations themselves. And I think pretty much any place where there's hills, you can do a similar observation. The recent one that Conspiracy Cat showed of Mount Rainier and a couple of other mountains, showing Mount Rainier, which is a lot taller, being shorter than it should be, because again, it's over a curve. So the main thing of there isn't a curve is something I thoroughly disagree with, because I can go out and observe the curve myself, literally just down the road, just by climbing up a hill and looking at things that are lower than they should be.
Yeah,
and again, it always matches with the calculations that we have of an Earth with a circumference of approximately 25,000 miles.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm trying to get out. I have a place. There's actually a place nearby where I live where you can see 7 states from one mountain, and I want to get up there on a clear day, but it has been raining nonstop for like the past month.
Yeah,
and a half
weather's never good. I'm in Scotland. I know what you're on about.
Yeah, you guys get it all year, but it's basically Scotland right now.
When you're up there doing those observations, try and look at some distant mountains or hills.
Yeah.
Make sure your camera's as level as you can be. Try and have a reference point, so you know that there's a particular height, and then look at the things further in the distance. And do the observation for yourself and look at how high those things should be, and then compare them to what we say and then to what it would be on a flat Earth.
Yeah.
And if you can look at those observations and see that things are as we say they are on a curve, surely that would be enough to kind of confirm that it's as we say it is.
Yeah, as long as you can repeat those observations, as long as I can go any day, dry weather and then with warm weather and moisture, and see the same thing, that's 100% proof to me. If you can go out and see it. But there's just all the curve experiments I've seen, it changes, and a lighthouse will be halfway gone one day, and then you can see the shoreline, and then the mountains in the background,
no one's denying
will drop and
refraction.
It's just it's such a game changer, because
I suppose you're right in a way that it does work both ways, because it can make things appear higher and lower, and it can confuse the issue. But there's ways to
just get rid of
eliminate
for
variables like that. Like, the best way to do it is to cherry pick the days that you do the observations. You want to go out and do the observations on the clearest days, with the least humidity. I mean, Red Rhetoric does most of his observations down in Florida, which is, a perfect place to kind of get these clear observations on great sunny days. I doubt I could get as clear observations as he does where I am up in Scotland.
Yeah.
But all the observations that he's ever done just comport with what we would expect on a globe. And the fact that they always come up, so many things always come up with, this is not presupposing a globe. You do the calculations and then you get these measurements that match the globe measurements. And they're always matching when you actually do the calculations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And back to what you were saying about the things that sort of solidified to me that things were off, that were not going around the sun, it was part of that journey in the early days with looking at the stars. I'm making a trip this summer to go to Australia, and
Well, that'd be cool.
quite awesome experience. I'm going to get to see, parts of the night sky that I've never seen before, parts of the firmament or whatever deep space. But
I mean,
how
would you explain the fact that you're going to see a different pole star with a different rotating set of stars?
It's interesting because when I was first making my observations of the stars, I went outside every night that it was clear. I looked at the sky, kind of like they say Copernicus did. He didn't have an advanced telescope or a camera or anything. He just went out and looked at the stars. And I went out and literally looked at the stars, took pictures, looked at them, and it was waiting for 6 months. I think I was about 7 months of just doing this and going outside and just looking at them and seeing if, every 3 months we should be, moving pretty far around the sun, and every 6 months we're on the other side of the sun looking a different direction. And what I was looking at night and seeing the same, it just did not match that model at all. It's almost like I would be able to see what's behind my head on this model. It did not match at all what I expected to see.
Does
I
it
was
make
mind blown.
sense when you think of the scales, though?
Yeah, I see what everybody's saying, but it's like
so far away, and there's no reason we would see a different night sky 6 months apart, because within the distances we're talking about, we're effectively in the same place. I know that we've traveled from one side of our star to the other, but within the grand scheme of
to be sure, there are stars and there are entire constellations that are not visible in winter that are visible in summer.
Yeah, there is some.
Yeah. So we do see changes seasonally.
There were some changes. Like I noticed when I do solar power experiments with you just basically starting a fire using water and sunlight. Like you can bend the water, you can make it spherical, shaped like a lens, and we do that with our kids who take them out and try to start a fire with sunlight. Well, in the wintertime, the sun its path has gone way south. It's like south. It's different. It's not directly above like in the summertime when it's directly over my head and you get sunburn in 30 minutes where I'm at, just being outside with it directly overhead at noon. But you go outside in the wintertime and its path is so far off, it's hard to start a fire or anything with magnification of sunlight like it is in the summer. In the summer, you can just...
Do you know why that is?
Start a fire.
That's literally to do with the fact that 6 months apart, the tilt of the Earth will, say for where you are, at one point the tilt is pointing towards the sun, and then 6 months later the tilt is pointing away from the sun. So when it's pointing away from the sun, that same amount of energy has to cover a larger area. So each mile square is receiving a less amount of energy from the sun, which is why you're less likely to get burnt and stuff in the winter than the sun, because you're literally not receiving as much energy per square mile. So yeah, in the winter, you're not going to be able to get that amount of energy to cause a fire with it. You're not going to get the sunburn and stuff. I mean, that you probably can get sunburn on some days when there's snow and stuff, but you're less likely to in the winter because it's not receiving as much energy per square mile.
Yeah.
So that's just the explanation for that. Is there?
It's going to be interesting.
I kind of want to ask you your opinion on the Behind the Curve documentary.
Yes, I knew with all the, it's just funny with all the damage control and everything going on. And there's certain people in the community that you have these red flags, like they're in every single piece of media, like every single documentary that's embarrassing toward us and makes us look crazy, and with Discovery Channel or whatever it is. And I've had that feeling that something's about to happen. And when that came out, I haven't watched all of it. I kind of skipped to the end because somebody had said that they used styrofoam and like little flashlights to prove the curve. And but then one of the guys who was talking about it, which they're sellouts, I'm pretty sure, were saying, well, we had to do it. We didn't really find the curve. The equipment messed up, and they recorded us saying, oh, whatever they said at the end, the kind of ending line, whatever they said was us having an equipment malfunction, and they edited it together to make it look like we found the curve when in reality, that's not what we were talking about. It was something totally different. But with the censorship
I mean,
and then
it's
that
quite
happening
clear
right away.
what happened with it. I
Yeah.
mean, with the light thing with Jeranism, there was no sneaky editing or something. He tried to do it with a laser, but the laser that he bought was completely, not the right type of laser for the job.
Yeah.
So they had to use a flashlight instead. And the way that they were using the flashlight was literally to see if they could see it through the hole when they were, with the boards that were lined up. And then when he couldn't see the flashlight, and the only way that he could see it was by asking the guy holding it to raise it up, it literally, before he'd done that, he'd said, oh, well, if the light, he has to hold the light up, then there's a curve. And that was exactly what happened. And he even directed it, can you hold the light up? And the guy held the light up and they saw it. And Jeranism's exact words were, interesting.
Yep. And then it just ends. That's the only part I saw. I kind of saw some of the parts towards the beginning.
What about the with Bob Nodell and the laser gyroscope? What do you think about that?
I didn't see that part. I just sort of skipped to the end to see what they were talking about.
I'm not sure if it was actually FE Core or a member of the community, but they managed to get hold of a $20,000 fiber optic gyro. The type that they use on planes to kind of keep everyone alive and stuff. And Bob had said quite clearly, this will answer the question as to whether the Earth is rotating. If it measures the 15-degree-per-hour shift, then the Earth's rotating. If it doesn't, then it's not. And lo and behold, it measured an exact 15-degree-per-hour rotation. Exactly. So then Bob was on camera going, oh, this isn't what we expected. And he was even caught in a conversation where he said to someone, if this gets out now, it's really not good for Flat Earth. But what I've just told you is confidential. For some reason, he said this in front of a documentary crew. But then they decided that they encased the thing in something to shield it from the heavenly energies, because then they come up with the theory that the rotation they were detecting was not the Earth, but the sky. So they encased it in something to try and shield the heavenly energies, yet still measured this 15-degree rotation, which is exactly what we would expect if the Earth is rotating 24 hours, 360 degrees in 24 hours. So does that not prove that the Earth isn't stationary and that it is rotating?
So I would have to. I don't really know how that would prove anything. I don't specialize in gyroscopes and anything like that. But that's interesting that they would say that on the
Mm-hmm. I mean, Bob is not a good spokesperson for the Flat Earth side.
Yeah.
So he is very much proved that the Earth does spin with a gyroscope. And I would encourage you to look up how gyroscopes, especially these fiber optic ring laser type gyroscopes, work. Because there is no way that doesn't prove that the Earth rotates.
Yeah. I'll look into that.
I think that everything that you've come up with as a possible whole, I think I've explained quite sufficiently.
Yeah. There's another thing I haven't brought up yet, and that was the actual firmament itself, and visual evidence of that I've put out there. It's been a while since I put it out there, but the actual firmament caught on video, where you can see it moving, the waves moving on the lower end of it, like there's a fluid barrier underneath it. You can see them moving at about 70 miles altitude. So about as high as we see people go. Like with the Virgin Galactic, they usually send people about 50 something miles up, and the Go Fast rocket made it about 72 or 73 miles up. Like I've never seen anything go beyond that distance, and that's exactly where that footage is when they got above the clouds during a storm. You can see it when the sprites shoot out of it, a literal wave moving across the surface, and then boom, these sprites shoot out. Spectacular. I mean, it's very beautiful footage if you've never seen it. I mean,
I mean,
I've never seen anything like it.
But, I mean,
It's not a flat earther that's doing it. It's actually it's not like a flat earth thing. It's a rare phenomenon that not many people have captured on video, and these people got in a plane and were able to capture it.
I can point you to plenty of footage showing where things have gone further than that, and actually, you know, into space and stuff. Like Red's rhetoric, I always refer to Red's rhetoric because the observations he's done are frankly, you know, a nail in the coffin for flat Earth. And one of the observations he did was watching a rocket go to space. And the way that we know that it got to space was because the sunlight was coming through in such a way that it was illuminating the gas coming out the back of the rocket. And as the rocket rose, you saw the gas plume out the back of the rocket get bigger and bigger and bigger until it was just like just a plume. And that was an example of the rocket going up into an area of lower pressure. And it didn't have a problem with the firmament. And there's plenty.
How high was it?
It was in space.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's plenty of footage to Red's rhetoric filmed this himself.
He filmed
with a camera. He followed the rocket. He watched the rocket launch and he followed it up. And you can see the separation of the stages as it gets up there, and you can see the gas expanding because the pressure up there is obviously, you know, not what it is down here. Mm-hmm. And there is tons and tons of footage of things being higher than that than a firmament would be. I mean, a firmament is something that is so debunked, and if there was a firmament, meaning that we were a closed system, then there's no way we could have a pressure gradient going from 14.7 psi at sea level to 0 psi at space. That couldn't happen if there was a firmament creating a closed system.
Yeah, well, the pressures, the air pressure is still the same. I mean, it still takes up the same. It's when you go up, similar to when you go down in water and you have to equalize, you know, with your nose, you have to kind of pinch it and blow. Yeah. It's the same thing.
But my point is that if there was a firmament, then that wouldn't be a thing. If there was a firmament, you wouldn't have that pressure gradient. It would just be one constant pressure everywhere. The reason there's a pressure gradient is because gravity is literally pulling the air down. And then as there's more air at the bottom, that, you know, the air pulling down on it will pull down as much as it can until there's air in the way, and then the next air on top of that, and that's why it gets less pressure as it goes up, because there's a force pulling that air down. Whereas if we were in something with a firmament, that downward force wouldn't be required to create the pressure, but the pressure would also be constant everywhere. It wouldn't be a pressure gradient at all.
Can I also say this? The ISS has been proven to actually be about, was it like 200 miles, like in altitude, like in orbit?
Yeah, again, Red's rhetoric did that, didn't he? Red's rhetoric and Astronomy Live actually calculated the altitude to the ISS using parallax from two different positions. And that was way above the 70 odd miles that the firmament would apparently be at.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been watching live ISS footage for hours. It is not matching up, but what do
you mean it's not matching up?
When I look at it, it doesn't match where it's supposed to be. When it says it's live, it's always it's not. It shuts out anytime it gets to pretty much close to where we're at, because I try to look at what the weather actually is and see it, and it actually match up. It's never 24/7. It's on for probably, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and then it's off, and then it's on, and then it's off for it's always off and on, but it doesn't match when I look at it and I pull up where it's at, what continent it should be over, where it should be. It never matches what I'm seeing from their live feed, but that doesn't prove that it's not up there. I'm sure they have something up there. They have technology that's mind-blowing that I can't. There's a lot of it that, you know, I can't wrap my mind around, because it's very, very, it's impressive. They've had a lot of time to,
I've
do this
got
stuff.
To say that every time I've looked at the ISS live footage, it's always matched up, and I don't know what you mean, whereas it doesn't match up, because literally every single time I look at it, you can look at where it is, because it's usually got the little map at the bottom showing where daylight and nighttime
both of those pages pulled up.
and it usually matches exactly where it is. And I mean, a lot of the time there's going to be cloud and stuff, and a lot of time there's going to be problems with transmission because the ISS isn't in like constant 24-hour contact because it's moving at a great speed around the Earth. So you know that feed is never going to be 24 hours. But if the 24-hour feed and stuff is what you want, that has been done. There's actually been 24-hour feeds set up on many occasions just for people to see it. And you can just search the YouTube for 24-hour live feed of Earth, and there's been plenty done by independent sources, not by government sources. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was a recent one done, and then they always match up. And another proof of kind of space and satellites is that the Himawari 8 is just it's astounding how it images, that entire side of the planet that it's on, like I think it's every 10 minutes at the moment, but I think they're upping it to every 5 minutes. And there's many ways that we know that the Himawari 8 is real, and the fact that it is so far out. When you look at the cloud patterns on the Himawari 8, you can then go to any live webcam in the world and look at the clouds, and they will match up exactly. There's Where's Wally, a channel, he's got tons of videos where he's personally matched the cloud patterns from the Himawari 8 to where he is in Australia. And there's another thing the Himawari 8 did that was fantastic. I think it was in 2015, there was a forest fire on the Mongolia-China border. And if this fire hadn't been noticed, it would have wiped out a whole bunch of villages, but it was noticed. And the thing that noticed it was the Himawari satellite. And they were able to use the satellite to track and predict where this fire was going. And save lives because of it. And that's a physical proof of something in space that has actually helped people.
Yeah, there's a lot of things floating around up there that are pretty helpful. A lot of satellites floating around.
Surely, if
there.
they're up there, then there can't be a firmament.
Well, if you see them launched, I mean, a lot of the ones that are up there. And we've captured some on footage passing in front of the moon. They're suspended by balloons. I mean, they're balloon satellites, the ones that I've seen and I've watched. I've got footage of it. I mean,
there isn't satellites on balloons. There's like weather monitoring things and stuff, but satellites aren't on balloons.
Anytime they come crashing down, they're
actually I think Discover satellite, Red Rhetoric himself filmed that being launched. Satellites aren't on balloons, and one of the ways we know that satellites aren't on balloons is the way the GPS system works. The GPS system works with a matrix of satellites moving at a particular speed, and there has to be at least 3. And the speeds that they are moving, is impossible for something on a balloon.
Well, that's where when I used to always watch the satellite launches as a kid, where they went up and they launched them into space. There's one where it's not actually launched with a balloon, but they were using a model, and you could see the string attached to it on NASA's footage, and there's a literal string attached to the satellite where they're pulling it out, and they're pretending that they're launching a satellite into space, but you can see that it's got a fishing string or a clear string just attached to it, and they're not really launching it into deep space like they say. And this was a part of those launches where they were always just throwing these giant satellites out into space, tons of them, and they would show their little highlight reel.
All these NASA videos have all been debunked.
The string hasn't been debunked yet. The string was there. I mean, you can see it. And then
when I say debunked, I mean, if there was a string there, then it was probably there as part of what it was supposed to be.
It was like a fishing string.
A balloon. I mean, how
do
you know it was a
this
fishing string?
wasn't
It wasn't
a
a fiber optic wire or something. That's the thing. You're just looking at videos and kind of making assumptions of what you think it might have been. Whereas, let's think of it this way, right? Our NASA, both smart enough to fool the entire world of all this stuff over all these years, but at the same time, dumb enough to leave a big bit of string where everyone can see it and prove that they're fake.
They a lot of things you just don't catch in post-production.
I mean, when you billions of dollars a month to fake stuff, then they ain't going to be getting it wrong like that.
Yeah. Well, like their early pictures of Earth. Like there was one I looked at, and on the cover of textbooks and all these things, it looked from Apollo 17, and it looks genuine. I mean, you look at it, it's like, wow, it looks like the Earth. Doesn't look. It's definitely looks real.
The
But then you look at
marble.
but one of the last when they said the last color images of Earth that we had, and somebody said something about it like it's dark in Tokyo, Moscow, London, New York, Los Angeles, Honolulu, and Sydney simultaneously, and that just got me to thinking. I was like, that what would it look like on the daylight when you look at the map of Earth that shows you where it's daylight at the same time, and that picture of Earth, it would have been dark in way too many places, and it's unless the sunlight was just way smaller that particular day to just light up what it did, because there's parts of America
I don't know
that would be
what particular image you're on about, but if you're on about
I
the
wish I
one
could send
from,
you
like, if you're talking about ones from Apollo 17, then I can guarantee you that's not CGI, because there was no CGI in 1972, and there wasn't even the
CGI at all.
I mean, that you couldn't have painted that, you couldn't have doctored it to look like that in 1972. It just wasn't possible.
You're right. I'm not saying,
in 1972, it would have literally cost more to fake people sending to the moon and make it look real than sending people to the moon.
I'm not saying that CGI.
So,
I've seen how they've taken some of those pictures. If I can send it to you, hold on. If I send it in a link down at the bottom right of my screen, I don't know how this thing works. Would that be something that you could see, that you guys could see?
David, would you be able to display what you're showing?
I can show it if he sends me a link, and I'll pull it up.
It just says where it says host, and there's like a little pencil. I don't know if it'll show you what I have.
Okay, just to let you guys know, we're coming up on 10 minutes left, so we still need time to go through super chats or anything like that. So we need to start kind of wrapping up and everything like that.
Okay,
okay. Well, why don't we just kind of start wrapping up then? I've actually enjoyed this conversation with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen me debate, and I can get quite angry and frustrated. But
yeah,
if anything, I think you've been more open to what I've been saying than a lot of flat earthers. And I kind of hope I've given you some things to think about and possibly look into, especially with gyroscopes and things like that.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd very much like to see some of these images that you're talking about, and maybe we can have a private hangout and talk about some of the specific things. I'd quite like that as well. But I think tonight that everything that you've presented as a possible problem, I think I've adequately explained why it isn't a problem. And you know, I hope that that's come across to you, and that, you know, I've not tried to be rude or condescending or anything, but I genuinely think you have a limited understanding of a lot of the physics that are required to actually know why the things are the way they are. And it's your lack of understanding that is making you kind of hold on to these ideas, because you don't quite understand the way that it should be within our model.
It's not that I don't understand it. It's just that it's it's just that it's based on theories. Like if I accepted it, it's based on what Einstein said or what somebody said the reality is like. And there's so many more. There's a lot of things that you know that go into it more than just that. I mean, there's a lot more than just the fraud and everything. There's a really long storyline, and our little view of reality is based on nobody that I know or anybody knows has seen the entire Earth. I don't think anybody ever has. That's the thing. So our view of the world is what somebody told us, experiments we can do and things we can observe. And it's one of those things. Not every part of both models is working. We really just need to find out what's going to work. I mean, I think with theories and what people say, then we can have a working model.
There's the thing about theories. When you say it's all based on theories, that is a massive misconception, because scientific theories are facts. When we say the theory of gravity, we don't just mean it's a wild guess or just someone's crazy idea. We mean it's been backed up with comporting evidence. It's been scientifically tested and repeatedly proven to be a fact. When in science, when we use the term theory, we don't mean the same as the common vernacular usage of theory. We mean fact. And that's, I don't like people using this, it's all based on theories, because a scientific theory is, you have to go through a bunch of stages to get to it being a scientific theory. At that point, we know that it is a fact. Otherwise, it wouldn't be given the name. I know, all right, it probably shouldn't be called a scientific theory. We should just call it a fact. But that's what it is. A scientific theory is a fact. I think we should probably leave it there and let Godless go through the super chats.
Yeah. Well, actually, Dave's going to have to go through them. I'm just here for kind of the ride and to, dictate time and stuff.
I got those pulled up right now. So we got 4 super chats. First one, official Jerboa already proved the world of Ark survival evolved is flat. Debunk that, atheists. Okay. Who's your atheist? $5. Why does God want people to be so unbelievably stupid? Particle Man, $2. Flat Earth is a mark that scammers use on the credulous. Possibly. Official Jerboa again for another $5. None of this matters. I took the video of the firmament and the art from space. You can't debunk it. Then accept the flat arc and Jerboa as your god. I think he's being facetious.
I think so.
Pretty sure. Particle Man for $5. This cordial simian is trolling you guys. He wins by your giving him your platform. He'll probably find a dozen dupes from this listing on trending.
I genuinely don't think that our guest here is a troll. If anything, he's probably the most sincere flat earther that I've ever talked to.
Thank you. Yeah, I am definitely not here to use you guys to take any of your subscribers or get famous. I know that with the way things are going, everything's dwindling down. Not sure how much longer my channel will be in operation if they don't just shut it down altogether. They've been shutting down a lot of things, so it's definitely not a money-making
I would hope
scheme.
that doesn't happen. I mean, obviously I disagree with Flat Earth, but I would never want all your channels to disappear, because you should all have the right to say what you want to say, but at the same time you're going to understand that I've got the right to call you an idiot for saying it. Yeah.
That's the beauty of this. I really wish that it was able to grow with the whole thing, and just I'm definitely not here to mislead anybody. I just want to expose fraud. That's really where I got my start, was exposing some of the fraud, because if something,
I don't think anyone's going to ever say that everyone no one's ever going to say that everyone's telling you the truth. Yes, there is conspiracies in the world. Yes, there are people that are lying to you.
Yeah, secret societies are not planning a surprise party.
You can't just then assume that everybody is lying to you and everything is false and everything's a fraud, because then that leads down the line of conspiracies. And I think that you are relatively intelligent, and I hope that you can look into the things that I've spoken with you about today and maybe have some different thoughts. And I would like to have a follow-up conversation with you at some point, most definitely.
Yeah, I'll probably send you some links to some of the things that's been just blowing my mind lately. Just to definitely get your feedback on it. But thanks a lot for having me. This is definitely a blessing to be a part of something like this and fellowship with you guys and do it the right way. And
thank you for joining and being courteous.
We got a last-minute super chat for $20, so I kind of got to read this. Thank you, Tim Pryor, for the donation. I know most people don't donate for comments like this, but I have to give props to the Flat Earth for actually having a proper debate. I'm impressed. Yes. Thank you.
I agree. I mean, I think this the 16th time I've been on now, and probably the most pleasant time that I've had a conversation with a flat earther.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Yeah, this is the first time I've ever done this with two people who believe in the globe. Not many people I know that I talk to. I don't actually go around debating people. I never do that. Like hardly anybody knows that I believe this except for my family, my brother, and a couple others. So it's kind of nice.
Yeah, probably definitely keep it from your employers at the school.
Yeah.
All right, John, do you want to take us out?
Stationary, you're fired.
Well, Dave, do you want to read that last super chat that we got?
Yes. Another one from Official Jerboa. Facetious? Flat arc is real. Watch the video. I can't do it as good as you do, GE. Sorry. I don't do all caps. I don't yell because I'm in a house with people. So.
Yeah. We appreciate everybody stopping by today to partake in this chat, especially our two debaters here tonight, Fight the Flat Earth and Flat Earth Brothers over here. It was a very good conversation, and really appreciate the pleasant conversation. It's a nice change of pace from like what we had earlier on the show here. So I hope everybody has a lovely weekend, and don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.
See you guys.